15 years, I kept my biggest success a secret from the people closest to me. They saw me as a failure, someone who had made the wrong career choices, someone who would never amount to anything. And now, the world knows. My life, my empire, it's all out in the open. Here's how my family finally discovered my net worth and how it changed everything. You see, the story isn't just about money. It's about the expectations that others place on us, about the judgments we face, and about the lengths we go to in order to break free from those constraints. For 15 years, I built something incredible from the ground up, but I kept it a secret. I lived under the radar, pretending to be something I wasn't, all to avoid the judgment of those who didn't believe in me. Why is this important? Because we all face moments where we have to decide whether to follow our own path or to live according to someone else's vision of us. My story is one of courage, resilience, and defiance in the face of doubt. And, at its core, it's about finally standing tall and saying, "I've made it," on my own terms. As we dive into this story, I want you to think about your own life. Have you ever hidden your true self from others? Have you ever been afraid to reveal your success because of fear of judgment or not being understood? Well, I was there, and I'm here to share with you how breaking free from that fear transformed my life and my future. Keep listening, because this is a story about more than just revenge. It's about taking control and owning your success, no matter who doubts you along the way. It all started when I was just 22, freshly graduated from college with the world at my feet, or so my family thought. They had big plans for me. My father expected me to follow in his footsteps, to work at his investment firm, to become a part of the family business. He thought that was the only path to success, and my mother, she thought I needed something stable, something secure, something real. But what they didn't understand was that I didn't want that life. I didn't want to follow a script that didn't fit me. I wanted to create. I wanted to be a digital artist. I wanted to explore the world of NFTs, the very thing they dismissed as a passing fad. But when I told my family about my plans, the response was clear. They didn't get it. My father specifically called my aspirations nonsense, and my mother tried to push me into a more traditional role, constantly reminding me how important stability was. They didn't see the potential I saw, but I didn't back down. I knew what I was capable of, even if no one else did. So, I started quietly working on my craft. I spent days and nights learning about digital art, NFTs, and blockchain technology. And then I sold my first collection for $50,000. But I didn't tell my family. In fact, I told them the opposite. I let them believe that I was struggling, living paycheck to paycheck just like they expected. I continued to play the part. Every time I visited home, I drove my old Honda Civic and lived in a small, inexpensive apartment. I acted like I was just getting by, even though I had already started making a substantial income. But none of them knew. None of them knew that I was building something bigger than they could ever imagine. The first year was intense, full of long nights and hard work. I invested everything back into my business, hiring developers, creating new platforms for artists, and pushing the boundaries of what digital art could become. And yet, to my family, I was still just Emily, the one who was throwing away her degree, the one who couldn't face reality. Looking back, it feels like a lifetime ago. I remember feeling like I was constantly living two lives, one in which I was the struggling artist trying to make it, and another where I was quietly succeeding. My family's disapproval became a constant companion, but I refused to let it stop me. I had my own vision, and I was determined to make it a reality. By the end of that first year, my net worth had hit $10 million. By year 3, it was $100 million. But to them, I was still just that girl who didn't get it. There were moments when it felt like it would all fall apart, the secrecy, the deception. But every time I was tempted to reveal the truth, I remembered the judgment I had faced from my family. I couldn't risk their criticism, their disapproval. So, I kept going. Quietly, stealthily, building an empire from the ground up. The hardest part was when I would visit home. Every family gathering, I would sit there pretending to be the one who hadn't succeeded. My younger sister Olivia would ostentatiously pick up the check, making sure everyone knew she was helping out her struggling sister. My mother would offer me money for rent, as if I was still the same Emily, barely making it. I accepted their offers, not because I needed the money, but because I couldn't bear to reveal the truth. It was all part of the act that I had to play to survive, the act that kept my family from seeing who I really was and how successful I had become. But all the while, I knew that one day, everything would change. The truth would come out. I just didn't know when. But the truth always comes out, and when it did, everything would change. The day my secret finally came out was like any other day, until it wasn't. I had just finished a meeting when I saw an email pop up on my phone. It was from Forbes. I opened it and my heart skipped a beat. The headline read, "Safia Sullivan's NFT empire valued at $3.8 billion." My breath caught in my throat. I had known this day would come eventually, but I never expected it to happen like this. An article was about to be published that would reveal my life's work, everything I had carefully hidden for the past 15 years. I sat back in my chair staring at the screen. I had known for some time that my digital art business was becoming a force to be reckoned with, but seeing it in black and white on a platform like Forbes felt like an entirely different level. This was it. This was the moment when my family, my parents, my siblings, everyone who had always doubted me, would finally know the truth. I was no longer the poor, struggling artist. I was a multi-billionaire. I thought about all the years I had spent building my empire, all the hard work, the sacrifices, the isolation. I had done it on my own, and I had kept it a secret from the people who were supposed to support me. But now, they would find out. They would learn that their little girl, the one they had labeled as the failure, was actually one of the wealthiest people in the country. The first person to contact me after the article went live was Marcus, my older brother. I could see his name flashing on my phone. He had been calling non-stop, and I knew exactly what he wanted to talk about. The truth was out, and he had just found out what I had been hiding for years. I answered the phone, and Marcus didn't waste any time. "What the hell, Safia?" he said, his voice filled with anger. "What is all this? Business Insider just called me asking for a comment about my billionaire sister? You need to explain this." I let out a breath and tried to stay calm. "You'll have to wait for the article like everyone else," I replied, a slight smirk tugging at the corners of my mouth. Marcus was furious. "How long, Safia? How long have you been hiding this from us? We thought you were struggling. We've been worried about you. And now we find out you've been sitting on billions? Explain yourself." I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the Manhattan skyline from my penthouse window. The view never got old. I had worked hard to get here. Remember when I moved to that tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn? When you and Dad thought I was throwing my life away with that digital art nonsense? I asked, watching him process the words. That was 15 years ago, and guess what? While you were busy working at Dad's firm, I sold my first NFT collection for $50,000, and 6 months later, I sold another for $200,000. I could almost hear the wheels turning in his head as he realized how much I had really been hiding from them. He was silent for a moment. But you still borrowed money from Mom and Dad for rent. You drove that old car. How is this possible?" I let out a small laugh. "Marcus, I didn't borrow money from them. I asked them to invest in my company, but they refused, loudly. And as for the car, it was a choice, not a necessity. The Honda was part of the act, part of the illusion, just like my apartment." I watched as his disbelief turned into confusion. "So, how much are you worth now?" he asked, his voice trembling. I paused for effect. "The article says $3.8 billion. But that's a conservative estimate. The real number is closer to $5 billion. I could hear his breath catch. "$5 billion?" he whispered, barely able to believe it. I nodded, feeling a sense of satisfaction. That's right, 5 billion. And that's just the beginning. Marcus was silent on the other end of the line, clearly processing the magnitude of what I had just said. The truth was, I had been waiting for this moment for years. I had spent 15 years building my empire in secret, carefully concealing my success from my family, and now the truth was out. They couldn't deny it anymore. I took a deep breath and continued. I have a board meeting to attend, Marcus, but we'll talk more at the family reunion. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions then. Before he could respond, I hung up the phone. I couldn't help but smile. I had spent so many years hiding in the shadows, pretending to be something I wasn't. But now I was done with that. The world knew my worth, and my family would soon find out exactly what I had built. The next part of my plan was set into motion. The family reunion was in 2 days, and I had something big planned for them, something they would never forget. The moment I hung up the phone, I knew things would never be the same. The secret was out. My family had learned the truth. But there was one more thing I needed to do. Something big. The family reunion was approaching, and I wasn't about to let this opportunity slip by. It was time to take control. It was time to show them who I really was and what I had built in silence. I had spent years playing the part of the struggling artist. I had allowed them to think I was failing, that I was someone who needed their pity. But now I was no longer that person. I had achieved something far greater than anyone could have imagined. It was time for them to see the truth, not just about my success, but about how they had treated me all these years. So I made some arrangements. I rented out a private island in the Caribbean for the reunion. Instead of meeting at the usual family resort, I was going to host them on my own terms. I had my private jets ready. Each family member would be picked up in Rolls-Royces, and every detail would be meticulously planned. I wanted them to understand that I wasn't the person they thought I was. I wasn't the failure or the dreamer they had labeled me. When the day finally arrived, I stood on the tarmac waiting for their arrival. My family's cars approached, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. This was the moment they would see the life I had built. First came my father, looking as confident as ever, but I could tell there was an unease in his steps. Then my mother, still perfectly put together, but her face showed signs of confusion. Behind them came Marcus, Olivia, and a few other family members. They all looked shocked. None of them had any idea what they were walking into. I stepped forward with a smile, a welcoming expression that hid the satisfaction I felt inside. "Welcome, everyone," I said, my voice carrying across the tarmac. "I trust the ride was comfortable?" My father, trying to regain some control over the situation, took the lead. "Sophia, this is unnecessary," he said, his tone still firm but with a hint of discomfort. "We could have had a perfectly good reunion at the resort." I couldn't help but smile. "The resort is too public, Dad," I said, my voice calm but confident. "I thought it was time we had some real family bonding on my island." My father was speechless, as were the others. I could see Marcus and Olivia exchanging glances, trying to process the grandeur of it all. They were no longer looking at me as the sister they had pitied. They were looking at me as someone who had surpassed them in ways they never thought possible. The family members began to file into the private jet I had arranged for them. Their eyes darted around the luxurious cabin, taking in every detail. Solid gold fixtures, rare art pieces hanging on the walls, champagne being served by immaculate staff members. The look on their faces was priceless. Is that a real Picasso?" Aunt Patricia whispered, staring at the artwork mounted on the wall. "Yes," I replied casually, as though it were the most normal thing in the world. "I bought it last year, along with a few others. But it wasn't just the art or the luxury that was going to make the biggest impact. It was the way I had orchestrated everything, the way I had taken control of the situation. For so long, I had played the role of the failure in my family's eyes. They had pitied me, condescended to me, and treated me like I was incapable of achieving anything. But now, I was in charge. I was the one holding the power, and they were finally starting to see it. As we flew to the island, I couldn't help but think about all the family dinners where they would talk about their success, how Marcus had followed in Dad's footsteps, how Olivia had made a name for herself in the corporate world, how they would all look down on me for my little art project. They never once took the time to truly understand what I was doing. They never saw the vision I had, but now they were forced to see it. When we landed on the island, the opulence was undeniable. The private helipad, the stunning views of the turquoise water, the pristine beaches. It was everything they had never expected. But the most significant part of this wasn't the island or the luxury. It was the fact that I had done this on my own. I had built this life by following my passion and ignoring their judgment. I turned to my mother, who had been quiet throughout the journey, her face filled with disbelief. "Mom," I said softly, "you've been worried about me for years, but you never once took the time to really see what I was doing. This is my success. This is the life I've built for myself, and I'm proud of it." Her eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't say anything. I could see the realization dawning on her, and I knew that, in that moment, she understood. The time for silence was over. It was time for me to take my place and show my family the truth. This reunion would be one they would never forget. As I stood on the edge of my private island, watching my family slowly come to terms with the reality of my success, I realized something profound. All those years of keeping my achievements hidden, all those years of pretending to be something I wasn't, had finally led to this moment. I had spent so much time and energy playing the part of the struggling artist that I almost forgot who I really was, someone capable of building something extraordinary on my own terms. This wasn't just about wealth or success. It was about independence. It was about taking control of my life and not letting anyone's doubts or judgments dictate my future. For 15 years, I let my family believe I was a failure, all to avoid their criticism. But the truth is, they never saw me as I truly was. They didn't see the strength, the determination, or the vision I had for my future. And that's okay. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need their approval. I had learned to trust myself, to follow my instincts, and to believe in my ability to succeed. The journey wasn't easy. There were countless times when I wanted to give up, times when the weight of the deception felt too heavy to bear. But every time I felt like quitting, I reminded myself of why I was doing this. It wasn't for them. It was for me. It was to prove to myself that I could achieve greatness, no matter what anyone else thought. And now, standing on that island looking at my family's stunned faces, I realized that I had already won. I had built something they never thought possible, and in doing so, I had freed myself from the expectations that had been placed on me for so long. I wasn't the daughter who couldn't make it. I wasn't the sister who needed to be saved. I was someone who had created a legacy built on passion, hard work, and resilience. As I looked at the faces of my family, I could see the mixture of emotions in their eyes: shock, disbelief, even regret. But more than that, I could see something else: admiration. They may not have understood my vision when I started, but now they were beginning to realize just how far I had come, and that was enough for me. The lesson here is clear. You are the only one who can define your worth. No matter what others think of you, no matter how many times they doubt you, you have the power to shape your own destiny. Don't let anyone's limited vision of you hold you back. Trust yourself, and trust the path you're on. Success may not come in the way others expect, but it will come if you believe in yourself and stay true to your goals. So, to everyone out there who feels like they're not being seen or who is being judged for following their own path, know this: your time will come. Keep pushing forward, keep believing in yourself, and remember that your success is yours to define. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences in the comments below, and if you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like and share it. Together, let's encourage each other to break free from the expectations of others